Number 5 on this list is Lord Combermere, or maybe better put as the ghost of Lord Combermere. The picture that we're going to look at today depicts the ghostly silhouette of the late Lord Combermere sitting in his chair. Insider writes, amateur photographer Corbet allegedly set up her camera and took this hour-long exposure while the funeral of her brother-in-law, Lord Combermere, was taking place 4 miles from the home. Interestingly, the apparition that appears to be sitting in the deceased Lord Combermere's chair is suggested to be Lord Combermere himself. I think the scariest part about this photograph is the timing. The fact that this was apparently captured literally right when the funeral for this man was being held. It's very possible that his spirit could have still been in and around the area and wasn't quite ready to leave the world of the living yet. Ghost Story UK says, it's thought by some that during that time a servant might have come into the room and sat briefly in the chair, creating the transparent image. This idea was refuted by members of the household, all testifying that they were all attending Lord Combermere's funeral. Sir William Barrett, who investigated the case and reported on it in the Journal of the Society for Physical Research, was not satisfied. Working on the theory that a manservant may have come in and seated himself in the chair, he took a test photograph and got a picture that was almost a duplicate of the Combermere photograph. The matter seemed ended, but as he told in his book On the Threshold of the Unseen in 1918, sometime later he received a letter from Lord Combermere's daughter-in-law about the photograph. She said that the face was always too indistinct to be quite convincing to me, though some of his children had no doubt at all of the identity. I may add, none of the manservants in the house closely resembled the figure and were all young men who were all attending the funeral. No one resembled him and everyone was out of the house when this photo was taken. For years the church and others have tried to explain this photograph, but they just simply can't. Maybe it was the ghost of Lord Combermere, or maybe it was a demon playing a trick on all of us. We may never know. Number 4 on this list is Freddy Jackson. In this photo, we're going to be looking at Sir Victor Goddard's Royal Air Force Squadron. This picture was taken in 1919 after World War I and showed a bunch of young strapping pilots. What's wild about this though is the unexpected visitor that we have in the back row. If we zoom into the top row and look at the man fourth from the left, we can see something over his right shoulder. An apparition of sorts that resembles a human face. After people started taking note of this and examined it, those who had worked with the squadron identified that face as Freddy Jackson. Freddy Jackson was a mechanic with this squadron for a while, but the crazy part is that he had died in a propeller accident several days earlier. Similarly to Lord Combermere, the day that this picture was taken was the day of his funeral. Maybe his ghost showed up because he was pissed all his friends were taking pictures and not paying their respects. But seriously though, how on earth do you explain a photo like that with tons of other people in it? It's impossible for it to have been staged, and it's clear that there's something there. Hopefully Freddy was able to find peace after his impromptu photo bomb. Number 3 on this list is the couple's demon. William Hope was a paranormal investigator who lived from 1863 to 1933. During that time, he was responsible for capturing a wide array of spiritual photographs which showcase ghosts and demons. Now, after evaluating some of his work, I think it's fair to assume that some of it is doctored. I'm not sure how one man would have been able to capture all the demonic pictures that he did without potentially faking a few. That being said though, I don't think that everything he's done has been doctored, and I imagine that there are some with serious legitimacy to them. One of his most famous is of an older couple with what clearly looks to be a demon standing behind them. When they took this photo, nobody was physically there, and they could only capture this devilish creature when they looked at the film after the fact. Some other entries on this list, I mean, you might be able to classify as a ghost, but this is 100% a demon. The eyes are black and unforgiving, and it looks as if you're getting sucked into a black hole of nothingness. You can't make out this creature's lower body at all, and she's just all black. She reminds me a lot of a few urban legends of female demons appearing around the world. Their stories differ, but there are some commonalities between them all. Usually a woman appears like this to a stranger, asks them a few questions, and if they don't answer properly, will drag them to hell. I'm actually surprised that the people in this photograph managed to get out of it safely without feeling her presence or being attacked while they were there. I'm pretty sure that the church can explain this one, they just probably won't like the explanation very much. Number 2 on this list is the lady in the lift. Whenever you step into an elevator, it feels as if you've stepped into a portal of some kind. If you really think about it, it kind of is a portal, considering you start on one floor and then finish on a different one. Now obviously there isn't anything magical about said elevators, and this portal of sorts is really just a mechanical innovation that takes you up and down tall buildings. That being said, this this non-paranormal portal definition might not apply to the elevator in this photo. As we can see, there are a few people hanging out and chatting by the elevators. This was a picture captured by a doctor in a hospital in Bolivia. The elevator in the right of the image decided to open all by itself though. The group didn't think anything of it at the time, but when they looked back, noticed something fairly unsettling. The apparition of a woman is clearly standing in the elevator, staring right at them. No one knows who this woman is, but it's clear that she's either a ghost or a demon. Elevators have always seemed to have a connection to ghostly apparitions for whatever reason. Maybe it's because they do give off the sensation of being a portal, but there are a lot of stories connected to elevators and hauntings. This photo actually reminds me a lot of a haunted place in Austria. A young girl was at a university residence during Christmas. She was pretty much the only one who stayed there and didn't go home for the holidays. While she was there by herself, she accidentally stepped into the elevator shaft and fell to her death. Now she's set to haunt that elevator and torment those who step inside. Maybe this photo is of a similar story, but just at the hospital. It's impossible to say for sure, but either way guys, I'd be taking the stairs. And finally, number 1 on this list is the little boy. This photo is extremely scary and just flat out disturbing. BuzzFeed writes, "The Reddit user who posted this image was deeply skeptical that there was anything paranormal going on, although they couldn't deny there is something chilling about the figure of a little boy staring out from the ruins of an old school. I grew up in a small rural town in between mountains. A couple years ago they were tearing down an old elementary school. A guy my mom knew went in and took pics with his cell phone. When he uploaded them, this was one of the pics. I don't believe in stuff like this at all. I just really don't know how to explain it since it was a cell phone pic, and I'm pretty sure that no one in my podunk hometown knows how to make fake pics. So maybe he doesn't know how, but I know how to explain it. You're in the ruins of an old school, and those ruins are haunted by the demon of a young boy. Sometimes the simplest answers are the right ones, and this to me looks like an example of that. This little dude 100% looks possessed, and you can't even really make out his legs. Nor can you actually see his arms either for that matter. Kind of difficult to make up a logical explanation for a kid with no arms and no legs floating in the middle of an abandoned school. Also, side note, but can you imagine being the one to take this picture? Like you turn a corner and you see that dude and your first thought is, I'm gonna pull out my phone and take a picture of this kid. Like if that's me, I am straight up running out of that thing and we're burning that building hot. Number 5 on this list is the cemetery baby demon. This photo clearly shows the apparition of a young child with jet black eyes floating over top of a gravestone. Stephen Wagner writes, "A woman named Mrs. Andrews was visiting the grave of her daughter in a cemetery in Queensland, Australia in 1946. Her daughter Joyce had died about a year earlier in 1945 at the age of 17. Mrs. Andrews saw nothing unusual when she took this photo of Joyce's grave marker. When the film was developed, Mrs. Andrews was astonished to see the image of a small child sitting happily at her daughter's grave. The ghost child seems to be aware of Mrs. Andrews since he or she is looking directly into the camera. Is it possibly a double exposure? Mrs. Andrews said there was no such children nearby when she took the photograph and moreover didn't recognize the child at all. It was no one she would have taken a picture of. She remarked that she didn't believe it was the ghost of her daughter as a child." Investigating this case, Australian paranormal researcher Tony Healy visited the cemetery in the late 1990s. Near Joyce's grave, he found the graves of 2 infant girls. So Wagner brings up the possibility of double exposure there, and that's a really common explanation for what could cause such an image. A double exposure is a combination of 2 images into one where one image is overlaid onto another at less than full opacity. This is done with artistic intent unless you're shooting film and forgot to wind it in between shots, but still you might get a happy accident. So it's possible that double exposure could be at play here if she forgot to wind the film, but then she would have had to take a picture of a young girl who looked like this in the first place. She claimed that she never did that, and also even if she did, that still wouldn't explain the eyes. Jet black eyes and looking about as close as possessed as they can be, this child certainly has some demon characteristics. Number 4 on this list is the railroad demon. Wagner once again writes, "A strange legend surrounds a railroad crossing just south of San Antonio, Texas. The intersection of roadway and railroad tracks, so the story goes, was the site of a tragic accident in which several school-aged children were killed, but their ghosts linger at the spot and will push idled cars across the tracks even though the path is uphill." This story may be just the stuff of urban legend, but the accounts were intriguing enough that an article about the phenomenon, the haunted railroad crossing, was written Britain. The article included a photograph submitted by Andy and Debbie Chesney. Their daughter and some of her friends had recently been to the crossing to test the legend, and she took some photographs. Inexplicably, a strange, transparent figure turned up in one of the photos. They had no idea that it was in the picture until the next day when I printed out the photo and showed them, said the Chesneys. It was really freaky. It appears to be a little girl carrying a teddy bear. Other readers who have viewed the photo think it shows a little girl with a dog sitting at her feet. Now, I don't like to classify demons as ghosts and ghosts as demons because they're certainly different. But even if what's going on here is due to a ghostly presence, then said ghostly presence certainly has demonic qualities. To be able to physically push a car and then also do it with the intention of killing those inside or killing those on the train, that's extremely evil, guys. I looked into the legend into San Antonio to see what had actually happened there, and it was really tragic. Back in the 1930s, a school bus full of children stalled on the tracks right before a train was scheduled to come. They raced to get off the bus, but not all of them made it, and 10 children lost their lives that day in the horrible accident. The more I looked into it though, the more I found that most people's experiences with these children have actually been good and not demon-like. That if you park your car on the tracks and leave it in neutral, they'll actually push it off the tracks to safety. All of this could be just one big hoax, but a picture like that goes a long way in validating the legend. Number 3 on this list is the backseat demon. Ever get the feeling when you're in a car that you aren't alone or somebody's watching you? Well, if you do, then you may have cause to be a little scared based on this photo. In 1959, a woman named Mabel Chinnery and her husband were visiting the grave of Mabel's mother. Whilst they were there, Mabel pulled out her camera and snapped a photo of her husband in the front seat of their car by himself. Except, when the film was developed, it's clear that he wasn't by himself. In the backseat of the car, you can see that there's some sort of humanoid creature right behind him. It's very dark and hard to make out, but apparently Mabel knew exactly what it was. To her, the being in the back looks identical to her mother, the person whose grave they were visiting that day. This picture was taken to an expert, and they concluded that it was not double exposure and the picture hadn't been tampered with. This has led most people to believe that the only real explanation for this photo is something supernatural. Number 2 on this list is the Wem Town Hall Demon. Back in 1995 in Shropshire, England, Wem Town Hall, an old building built in 1905, burned to the ground. Locals gathered and watched as the fire department tried to save the building, but alas, it was no use and it did eventually burn down. During the blaze, some of these bystanders took some photos of what was going on, and one of them, when it was later developed, started quite the controversy. As you can see in this picture, there's very clearly a girl standing behind some bars in the building. Now, before we go any further, I want to say that this isn't a living person in danger because from my research, nobody actually got hurt in this fire. The thing is though, that if this wasn't a living person, then who the heck is it? Well, the legend says that this apparition is that of a girl named Jane Churm. Jane Churm was a young girl who lived back in the 1600s but died in a tragic fire. This fire took place in the town of Wem, and it was actually said to be started by Jane herself. Now, back then in the 1600s, the fire was started by accident, but that might not have been the case for the one in 1995. Lots of people think that Jane actually started this fire and that the picture shows her ghost or a demonic version of her watching her work. It should also be noted that Dr. Vernon Harrison, an expert in photography, studied this photo and concluded that it was a genuine photograph. Pretty spooky stuff if you ask me. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Tulip Staircase Demon. This one is scary for a number of different reasons. Stephen Wagner says, Reverend Rolf Hardy, a retired clergyman from White Rock, British Columbia, took this now famous photograph in 1966. He intended merely to photograph the elegant spiral staircase known as the Tulip Staircase in the Queen's House section of the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich, England. Upon development, however, the photo revealed a shrouded figure climbing the stairs, seeming to hold the railing with both hands. Experts, including some from Kodak, who examined the original negative, concluded that it had not been tampered with. It's been said that unexplained figures have been seen on occasion in the vicinity of the staircase, and unexplained footsteps have also been heard. This photo isn't the only evidence of ghostly activity at the Queen's house either. The 400-year-old building is credited with several other apparitions and phantom footsteps even today. A few years ago, a gallery assistant was discussing a tea break with two colleagues when he saw one of the doors to the bridge room close by itself. At first, he thought it was one of the lecturers. Other ghostly incidents include the unexplained choral chanting of children, the figure of a pale woman frantically mopping blood at the bottom of the tulip staircase, slamming doors, and even tourists being pinched by unseen fingers. So very clearly, this place is deeply haunted, guys. I think arguments can be made that there are ghosts, demons, maybe even creatures all chilling at this one spot. Whenever we capture a photograph like this, and it's literally of a place that already has a legend surrounding it, I think that really adds to its legitimacy. People had been saying for years that something was up here, and then there was finally some proof when this picture was taken. Also, the fact that it's been proven to be genuine makes it pretty hard to explain. Number 5 on this list is a dark-winged demon. This picture was posted by Richard Christensen on his Facebook account several years ago in 2017. On the post, he commented asking, "What the hell do you see in this picture for reals? Anybody?" The internet immediately exploded with responses, and the post was shared thousands and thousands of times. Various explanations from people emerged in the comments. The common explanation is that the picture was doctored and that Richard had photoshopped the picture to create the outline of what looks to be something demonic and evil. Richard claimed that this wasn't the case though, and that it was an authentic photograph. Another excuse was just poor lighting, and that's what created this demon-shaped shadow. But frankly, I don't see how lighting could be responsible for this though. That is a very specific outline, and I have no idea how some poor lighting could make such a distinguished shadow like that. One other person actually suggested that it was just the outline of a palm tree, but I've never seen any palm trees that look like that before, so I'm gonna rule that one out too. Now, this whole time I've been assuming that this creature in the photo is inherently evil, but for all we know, that could also be an angel. Angels have wings too, and considering we can't make out its distinct features, it could be possible that that's the case here. However, there's also something very intimidating and imposing with the way that creature is standing and holding itself. It certainly doesn't look safe and reassuring like an angel might. No, it looks far more demonic than anything else. What it's doing in a suburban area of Phoenix, Arizona is anyone's guess, but whatever it is would be something that I'd be avoiding at all costs. Honestly surprised that Richard even managed to capture a photo at all. If that was me, then I'd be hightailing it out of there. Number 4 on this list is the SS Watertown Ghosts. This is a famous picture captured on film from 1924 that seems to depict two demons or two ghosts on it. Trust Yourself writes, Seaman James Courtney and Michael Meehan were assigned to clean out a cargo tank. While they were doing this, they were overcome by gas fumes and died before help could reach them. Following the tradition of the sea, their bodies were committed to the ocean on December 4th. The following day, just before dusk, the entire ship was in uproar when the heads of the two dead seamen were clearly seen on board the ship and later in the sea. Thereafter, the ghost faces were frequently seen. A snapshot was taken and the camera, with film intact and untouched inside, was handed to Captain Keith Tracy for safekeeping. The sightings of these faces kept being seen years after the photo was taken, but slowly as time went on, they became less and less frequent. The film was produced long after the sightings actually happened, but as you can clearly see, there are two very demonic looking faces in the picture. Their faces look distorted and honestly as if they're coming straight out of hell. Their eyeballs are missing and their mouths kind of look like black holes. I have no idea how they would have staged such a photo if potentially you think that could be an explanation for this. No one's been able to explain this picture to date, and without any new information, it's probably gonna stay that way. Number 3 on this list is the Spectre of Newby Church. The Spectre of Newby Church is definitely one of the most well-known ghostly photos in human history. This one is scary as all holy hell and would honestly warrant a serious call to some Ghostbusters if I was running said church. The picture is taken in the Church of Christ the Consoler, which is found in North Yorkshire in the United Kingdom. The image was captured by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in 1963 and showcases one of the scariest demons there is. The demon in the photo resembles a doctor during the plague with the long beaked mask on and the dark black robes. windows. One could also make the argument that this apparition also resembles death itself though, which is a pretty terrifying thought. Now, some people have chalked the photo up to a simple double exposure error from the camera, but Reverend Kenneth F. Lord truly believes that there was some kind of demonic spirit present when he took the photo. Some skeptics have come back and bashed the Reverend, saying that this photo had to have been doctored and that he must have had his friend step in and act as the figure. But once again, he swears it isn't the case. I suppose that I could see the double exposure thing, like it's possible that that might be the reason, but I definitely don't believe that the Reverend would purposely doctor the photo. Why on earth would he want to start a legend that his own church is haunted by a demon? It just doesn't make any sense. In circles that believe in paranormal activity and demons, this picture is still getting talked about as being potential proof of their existence. I'm not personally convinced that it's conclusive evidence, but I also don't think that we can write it off either. Number 2 on this list is the Cooper photograph. The Cooper photograph is one of the most famous pictures with a demonic creature that simply can't be explained. I actually probably shouldn't say demonic creature because we don't know for sure, but the photo definitely captures something paranormal in it. In the mid-1950s, the Cooper family purchased a home in Texas. This home had been there for quite some time and had a deep history to it. On the first evening that the family was moved in, Mr. Cooper had his wife, mother, and 2 children positioned in the kitchen for a photograph to commemorate the first night in their new home. The family was happy and all smiling, but that's just because nobody had any idea what was lurking behind them. Time passed and the family was happy in their new home. Then after a few weeks living there, when Mr. Cooper's film had filled up, he took it to the local pharmacy to get it developed. Then he came back a week later and discovered one of the creepiest pictures in history. In the entire left half of the photo, it looks as if a person is suspended in midair upside down. They look like they're hanging from the ceiling as if some higher power was holding them from their legs. The face is totally blurred out and just looks dark and eerie. If I didn't know any better, then I'd say the family hoisted a dead body up there and took the picture while it was hanging from the ceiling. Mr. Cooper and everyone in that photo swears that they never saw anything and were totally alone in that room. So what is this ghostly or demonic apparition that decided to visit them on their first move-in? Is it possible that the camera roll just messed up or the film got corrupted? Honestly, maybe, but how does the film get corrupted in such a way that it's in the exact form of someone's body hanging from the ceiling? Maybe they just happened to move into a home inhabited by the ghost of a gymnast and caught a mid-routine. This picture's probably one that we're never gonna fully know the answer to. Number 1 on this list is the Brown Lady. The Brown Lady is the ghost that haunts Rainman Hall in England. It's one of the most famous hauntings in the country due to this image that was captured of her back in 1936. Wikipedia writes, according to legend, the Brown Lady of Rainman Hall is the ghost of Lady Dorothy Walpole, the sister of Robert Walpole, generally regarded as the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. She was the second wife of Charles Townshend, who was notorious for his violent temper. The story says that when Townshend discovered that his wife had committed adultery with Lord Wharton, he punished her by locking her in her rooms in the family home, Rainman Hall. According to Mary Wortley Montagu, Dorothy was in fact entrapped by the Countess of Wharton. She invited Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that her husband would never allow her to leave, not even to see her children. She remained at Rainman Hall until her death in 1726 from smallpox. The first sighting of this ghost was roughly 100 years later in 1835 by Lucia C. Stone. She said that the ghost had empty eye sockets and her blank face glowed. These legends continued as the years passed until this photo was released and everybody lost their minds. Once again, the excuse of double exposure has been thrown around as a possible reason, but many people who were there believe it to be real. Corrupt film might make sense for a photo that doesn't have a legend already circulating around it, but it feels like too crazy of a coincidence to have had ghostly sightings for over a century and then also a picture in that exact spot have double exposure happen to it. Especially when the ghost or demon that appears in the photo looks identical to the descriptions people have reported over the years of Lady Dorothy Walpole. Comment down below what you guys think about this picture. I personally tend to believe this one a bit more than some of the other ones on this list, but I want to hear your thoughts.